to my tutorial. I'm Katie Nelson. I'm also known as Katie the Creative Lady, and you can find me at katiethecreativelady.com, where I have a blog that I post to a few times a week, links to lots of fun and creative categories, and a little online shop. So I hope you'll come and visit me there. Today I'm going to talk about how to create stunning scrapbook pages with black and white photos. I'm going to be using my Color Stories black and white collection for this tutorial, and I'd like to just take a quick walkthrough with it so that you can see the pieces involved and hear a little bit about the design story behind them. I always include a set of pocket cards in all of my collections, and these are great. There's a printable PDF if you want to print them out to use them for printed projects or traditional paper scrapbooking. You can also use them for digital scrapbooking. A lot of people love pocket cards for pocket style pages, or they can of course be used on traditional layouts. They're also fun if you want to print out notes or make greeting cards out of them. And you can see there's a wide variety here of themes and topics, all in black and white, that will go with many different types of pages and projects. I like to just show you the filler cards. These turned out really fun. I always love some good quotes and just some fun imagery to add for some personality on your pages. One of the filler cards in this pack is a little unique in that there is an empty space. This is a frame that you would put a photo behind. That is my grand dog right there, Piper. She's awfully cute in that little frame. Also, just another great quote, a really fun image out of thumbprints for a heart. And then I always include the 6x4 size as well as the 3x4. It gives you the option to be able to put the kind of placement that you would like. Some people like to do more horizontal photography and have their pocket pages have horizontal spaces. Some people like more vertical spaces. There are many options, and of course many of these will fit into square spaces as well. The frame card in the 6x4 size has 2 openings, so that's a little extra fun there. Journaling cards are always part of my collection because I think it's so important that you can tell the story and add your words to the cards. These are great ways to add a little bit of journaling to your layouts. And again, in the different orientations, the vertical 3x4 and the horizontal 6x4. I love a good paper pack, and that's probably my favorite thing to design are the papers. You can, of course, use these for digital projects or print them out for hybrid. The wonderful thing about digital paper packs is you can use them over and over. You don't run out of a piece of paper. You get to use it on as many projects as you want. And I have found as I've worked with this collection that I've used the same papers on multiple layouts with a completely different look. Here's a little glance through at the papers, a crosshatch, some stars, a really fun little chevron, and I love those flowers on the gray. That's a paper I've used a lot. Really fun monochromatic stripe, and this paper over here is one that's hard to tell from the preview. That's why I like to show you an up close. It's a screen pattern, so you get a little variation in there, which really makes it interesting and fun on a layout. Of course, a fun gingham and sort of a distressed dot, which I like. And a little flower print, some good basic stripes, really fun polka dot, and a good bold plaid. Those are really fun to use. I have a template set. I always put one in each collection because I like to take the guesswork out of layouts. It's so nice to not have to think about where am I going to put this photo and how will this work, how will the measurements work. I do all of that work for you. And so it makes it just really easy. You get to go right to the fun part. I've already included nice shadowing, not too heavy, but enough that your photos pop a little off the page. And of course, these templates can be used over and over again as well. There are 4 single page templates and for double page templates. There are the previews for the double page templates that show you as well some of the layouts there. Stamps and brushes. I have another tutorial all about how to use stamps and brushes. So if they intimidate you, be sure to watch that. And I'll put a link in my comments here on this video. But they are so fun to use. They're great to add to photos or to paper or journaling cards. They're great for hybrid crafting. A lot of card makers love digital stamps. You can change the sizes and the colors and use them over and over. So we're going to get right to the photos. So when you edit photos that are already black and white, you will follow a different process than if you were using color photos. And there are numerous ways to use black and white photos and to get black and white photos. Right here, I'm showing you two photos that were taken with black and white film. The one of my children was taken in the year of 2000, and I had a roll of black and white film that I was experimenting with. Now this one on the other side is actually my mom when she was a little girl and her little brother. And this was taken sometime in the 1950s. I don't know the exact date. And of course, all they had were black and white film cameras. So we're going to talk about that. Now you may have black and white photos that are from color photos, but you may have played around with different apps on your phone or on your computer, and that's fine too. Just consider them black and white photos for this, and I'll show you some tricks. I am going to use Adobe Photoshop Elements 2021 for this, but the things that I'm showing you are not limited only to that program. I'm going to show you some things to keep in mind with black and white photos that will apply to any program that you use. All right, the first thing you want to do, now when you have older black and white scanned photos, you might see some kind of damage when they were scanned or, from being an older photo. So in this case, I can crop out a lot of that damage. I don't need all that background. I'm not using any sort of restriction on my cropping size. I'm using the cropping tool, and you can see I just got rid of a lot of that. That's a really easy way. I'm going to go back and have my select tool, and it's important to pay attention to these things on top. Usually when we're digital scrapbooking, we're in expert mode. But when you're working on photo editing, you can go to guided or quick. I'm going to go to quick here because they have a lot of I guess examples pre-done for you. I'm not sure exactly how to say that, but I play around with the sliders, with their tools that can make this work automatically. And you have to kind of get a feel for how it looks. If you study black and white photos, you'll know you don't want them too dark or too light. You want skin tones to look natural. Now you can see with this particular photo, it's kind of yellowish, and that's the way they came out from that film. I didn't have an editing program back then. It was not digital photography. So one thing I like to do is I'm playing around with all these different sliders, and don't be afraid to push the buttons. All you have to do is hit Edit, Undo, or go Control Z or Command Z if you're on a Mac. Now you can see when I selected one of the color choices here, I got back to really what I think is a true black and white look. It can go a little too purpley or blue if you're not careful. So you want to watch your temperature hues and your colors and play around until you get the look that you want. I really like this looking more like a traditional black and white instead of more yellowish. This was right in front of a window. I love the light on my daughter's hair that shows up. I'm just going to go ahead and save this. I'm happy with it. I always put the year of the photo, if I know it, in my file name. And I save it in a full resolution. Okay, this is a great photo. This is my grandfather in the 1920s. He's a young man. It's got to be late 1920s or early 1930s. And we're not exactly sure how old he is here. This is a photo that has been passed down to my mother. We've scanned it. You can see there's a lot of damage around but really for such an old photo, it's in pretty good shape. This was on Bodega Bay in California, and I love this photo. I want to use it for sure. It is a black and white photo, but it's got that brownish kind of sepia, I'm not sure how you say that brownish look that happens with a lot of those older photos. So I'm going to work on editing that. And again, I can do some cropping to get rid of some of that damage around the edge with my crop tool. In this case, I think I will use the photo size, the photo ratio, to keep it fairly similar to the original image. But I'm going to crop it. I don't want to crop too much out. I still want a lot of that pretty water and background. But, this way I can focus a little more on the subjects. And so I'm going to use this spot healing tool. I don't know if you saw this over here on the side. It almost looks like a little Band-Aid icon. But this is one of my favorite tools to use. And so it's a spot healing brush. And you'll want to go through and just apply it in a little size. You can see my settings down here, just very small. And I'm going to go over some of those dots. And you'll see you need to experiment a little bit and see what looks good. You can overdo it on this for sure. Like right here, that line in the water, I couldn't tell if that's really part of the water or if that's a scuff on the photo. And as I started to take it off, I thought, you know what, it doesn't bother me there. And I don't want the photo to look overly edited. So I just left that there. I think that's fine. But I'm going to get rid of some of these more distracting spots. Then the important thing to do when you have a black and white photo is I like to start in the quick menu, because the guided menu can take you to some black and white edits. And I'll show you why that's important later on. But here, I'm really just playing with the sliders and the different settings. And I can see when something is too intense. See, that just turns it really pink and just too dark. And so I play around with different things. I start looking, I think my exposure's okay. I always like to check the auto settings, because then it will show me what the computer mind thinks that this photo should look like. And that gives me a good idea. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the one I'll go with, but I like to see what the AI, the artificial intelligence, would say about this photo. So I always check in on that too. I can always undo anything I want. Now there I'm getting that true black and white look. That's feeling a little more comfortable. I'm going to play around with different hues, different sliders. I don't want to lose the crispness of this photo by over editing it. That's something that can really happen. Again, checking temperature balance, checking, the different hues really helps. And I'm happy with that black and white look. Now, once I have it as a black and white that I really like, I can go into some of the guided fixes and try some of their auto settings, maybe bump the contrast just a little bit. And now, look at the shadows on the water. And I feel like that is more representative of what I wanted. I can continue editing in quick or expert. I can still play around with it. I can play around with this all day if I want to. And that can be very tempting. Eventually, you just kind of have to pick what you want and learn to trust your eye. Does it look natural? Does it look right? Here's some of the guided edits for black and white photos. Now, if I hit light or dark, see dark, you can tell they start to darken up too much and it becomes harder to see the details. You can also increase your contrast. You can get too far on that. So just back up, hit Control Z or Command Z. And then once you're ready, be sure to save it. Save it as a different file name than the original photo. If you don't know an exact year, you can guess. I always like to put some sort of year in. I'm going to save it as a JPEG. And again, I'm going to use that largest file size, which is a 12, and get that saved. I'll close that out. I've already saved it. I don't have to worry about saving it again. Now here's that fun little photo of my mom and her brother. You can see there's some spots. I don't know if they're from scanning or just from an older photo. I'm going to use that little spot healing brush, just a tiny little bit here and there to get rid of those white spots, those spots on the white border. And there's a couple of spots on the area where they're standing. I'll take care of a couple of them, but I'm not going to overdo it. We don't have to have it be perfect. We really want to capture the scene. And I really wouldn't want to crop a photo like this. I love seeing the old car and the old house in the background. So I'm going to my quick menu again. And I'm going to try, when I hit auto levels, that just really darkens it up too much. So I'm going to be careful on this. This photo tends to be a little pink, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to, not be pink, but that's gonna affect how I want to edit it. Now, if I try to get rid of that pink, I can go a little too blue. So it's just important to kind of look and see what you think looks right. Think about how your eye is pretty smart. Your eye is going to know, does that look natural? Do those clothes look right? Does their skin look right? Does the sky look okay? And just play around with different settings and you'll start to really get a feel for this. This is true in photo apps on your phone or in any program. I'm simply showing you how to use this in Photoshop Elements. So as I start to play around with this, I feel like I'm getting closer. So I'm going to go and try some of the guided edits for black and white photos. I'll lighten it up a little bit, and see there we're going more to a traditional black and white look. Maybe if I increase the contrast just a little bit, then it's not overdone like that auto setting was. And again, I could go more into expert editing, I could go more into the quick menu, or I can just save. And eventually you have to make a decision and kind of move on with your life. This is when I felt good about how it turned out. I'm happy with how it looks, and I'm saving it again. Okay, so now we're going to keep going, and then when that's showing you what to do with black and white photos that are already black and white. But if you want to change color photos to black and white, that's a little bit of a different approach. And some people say, why would you even do that? I mean, we're so happy to have color film, right? But there are a lot of reasons. First of all, it can be a choice that you might make to help your photo go with the supplies you want to use. And that might sound silly, but I'll show you kind of some examples. And that's an okay choice to make. You wouldn't want to do it with all your photos, but sometimes if you really want to do a page that is about a certain theme and the digital supplies you're using are in certain colors and that's what you want to use, it's okay to change your photo to fit that. It's also a great way to hide imperfections. A lot of times when I do selfies, I change them to black and white because you don't see as many of the little imperfections on my skin, or it's just a little more forgiving. It's also a tool that you can use to put emphasis on the subject. So if you don't want to focus so much on what's going on in the background, but you really want the people to pop, black and white is a great choice. It's also just sometimes a design or an artistic choice. Black and white photos can be really beautiful. Okay, I'm going to start with this little photo of my nephew on the day he was born. And this is one of those instances that I'm talking about where you might want to change it to black and white. The reason I did here is because there's just a lot going on in this picture and I really want to focus on his face. We've got the colors and the design of the blanket. We've got different colors and a design of his little hat. This is my mother holding him, and she's got a plaid shirt on, and that's his mom in the background with the hospital gown and the bed. And so there's just a lot going on. And so if I want to really keep the focus on him, I'm going to try some black and white. So I will go to the guided first. That's what I do for color photos to turn them black and white. Instead of heading straight to the quick editing, I go to the guided and I use one of their presets to get a basic black and white look. Now I'm trying the different ones here. The lighter actually looks really good. The dark is just too dark. It doesn't look natural with the setting that he was in. So I'm going to go with the lighter, but I'm also going to bump up the contrast a little bit because it was just a touch too light. So again, just playing around, getting a feel for it. Now that I've done that basic black and white editing, I can go ahead and put that into I can go ahead and either just save it as is, or I can go into the expert or into the quick editing. And here I'm going to go into the quick and just try a few of those things I was using earlier for black and white photos, just to make sure I like where it's at. I want to see what the auto settings would do and kind of check my work that way, if you will. So obviously I'm not going to play around with the exposure, but it is kind of fun to see what happens. You start to learn a lot about photography when you play this way. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. I feel really good about the look I'm getting here. So I'm not going to try too many more things. It's just kind of fun to experiment a little bit. But yeah, that looks really nice. And again, you can play with the sliders or try the different buttons, but I'm happy with this, so I'm going to go ahead and save it and make sure that I always put in the year, but sometimes I'll put in the month too. I won't worry so much about that here, but that's something I'll do for my files. Okay, the next photo, and again, I'm not going to save it here because I already saved it. So this one's interesting because it doesn't have a person. And sometimes these can be edited very differently. Again, I'm going to go into guided and get it to a basic black and white first. Now I'm going to try these different settings, but you know what? They don't look the same as they did on that picture for my nephew. That one's way too light. I actually like the dark look here because the books look more natural and like how they really do in real life. Now that's too dark. So you kind of sometimes have to try the different settings before you know the right one. I'll increase my contrast a little bit. And then again, choose if I wanted to just save it or do more editing. Here I feel fine about it. But let's just look a little bit more. We'll just see if there's anything else. Checking the auto levels and the auto contrast can often be a good way to see how close am I to what the computer thinks would look best for this picture. And I'm really liking the look of a little bit darker. Playing around with my temperature, I'm feeling good about where I'm at, so I'm just going to go ahead and save it. This is one of those photos that I don't need to spend a lot of time on it. It's not going to be a framed gallery piece. So here I did add the month to the year because I did have that information. All right, let's look at one more. Hopefully you're starting to really get a feel for this. This is my daughter in 2009. And we're going to go into the guided edits and use the black and white settings. And that's not bad at all. That's too light, obviously. So we're going to go back with that and we'll play around with some contrast. And I'm not going to worry too much about this. The important thing is that white looks nice and that her skin looks good. And I'll play around with some of the other settings and just see where we're at. Just try a few lighting and temperature switches. And I'm not getting a lot of different results from hitting the auto levels. So I feel like I've got this dialed in pretty well. Again, it's not one that I need to spend a lot of time on. So I'll go ahead and save that. I know I'm going a little quick. So if you need to rewind this and look at some of these settings and everything, it's hard to keep these videos a little bit shorter. So feel free to rewind as needed. All right, so that's a pretty good feel for how to treat your photos based on whether they're black and white or color to begin with. Now I'm going to show you some fun ideas for black and white scrapbooking. It's another way you could put it as maybe more monochromatic scrapbooking or even dark scrapbooking. I love this look for both modern pages and heritage pages. And this is something I've always enjoyed, even back in my paper days. So these are some photos that I have taken up in a beautiful place in Utah of some beautiful trees. And I really love black and white photos for snow. I just think that's really kind of a stunning look. And the other photo was just on a sunny evening. So I like how those looked with black and white. Decided to use one of my templates and some of my papers and put together a layout that just makes me happy. And that's a good enough reason to create a layout. Here's one that my daughter made of her and her husband. And I love how she used that Just My Type card. It's really cute. Here's a really fun one with that kind of crazy polka dot, but it was perfect for these photos. These photos are from 2005 when we went on a Disney cruise. My kids are quite young there. And so I have been wanting to make some pages about that trip and used some of the cards and papers and the template for that. The Take Time to Play ended up fitting in just perfectly next to that photo of shuffleboard. Here's that photo that I worked on of my grandfather. And I just used the plain papers. You know, a lot of people, the solids, I shouldn't say plain. They're very beautiful. But solid papers can come in really handy for all sorts of projects. And I love them for a subtle look like this. All I did was layer one on the top and move it up a little bit. And then I added my journaling. And this is when it's always interesting to journal about something that you weren't a part of. You have to do some imagining. And so I wrote a little bit about when this photo would have been taken. And we don't know for sure who's in the boat. We think the young ladies in the front must be his sisters because we know the age that they were compared to him, and it seems right, but we're not sure. So I love being able to imagine what was going on there. I wish I knew more details though. Black and white doesn't just have to be all black and white. Black and white works really well with pops of color because black and white goes with everything. You can use any color with that. Heritage pages, I would encourage you to usually try muted and softer colors. You don't always have to. There are times where brighter colors could work. But typically with heritage pages, you will see a little softer look. So here are some of the photos that I used, and I combined them with some of the color photos from that same day. That's a really a fun look that I love, is mixing black and white with color photos. Again, I used one of my templates and some of the papers from the kit. And here's that little photo of my mom and her brother. I made a mini scrapbook page. This is only 6 by 6 and just added a little title to it. All right, black and white goes with any theme or color scheme. There's a lot of things you might think of with black and white. For me, it's classy, modern, simple, dramatic, playful, even respectful. Think of all the things that come to your mind when you think of black and white. This is a printable from my printable pack that goes with this set as well. And I just thought that would be a fun illustration for this page. Here's another printable with that Take Time to Play message. And I wanted to end with that and encourage you to take the time to play with your photos. Try out different settings for your black and whites and turn some of your color photos into black and white I think you will really enjoy working with them. And please be sure to like or share or follow or all of the above of this video, because it really helps me out and helps me to be able to make more videos. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you'll visit me on my website at katiethecreativelady.com.